Hello, hello, and welcome to the 51st episode of the Flying Cat Marketing interview series. Today, I have Adam Lambert, who's the Director of Marketing at RevBoss. RevBoss is a venture-backed sales prospecting software and a service company, and they help their customers get customers. What does that mean, Adam?
Well said. It means we work mostly with marketing agencies and consulting agencies and SaaS companies, right? That's mostly exactly our target market. And we do outbound marketing for them because it's very time consuming and tedious, and it has to be adjusted perpetually. And we've done it tens of thousands of times, and we help people who've never done it before start it.
Okay, so you're the Director of Marketing for an outbound marketing company.
Sure.
Tell me what counts as outbound marketing for you, actually? Because I always see outbound as just sales.
That's a totally fair question. I would say outbound marketing is chiefly, or the thing that still gets the most traction, and you can like Google this pretty quickly and get some page one results that speak to this, is cold email, right?
Okay.
And all you're doing there is when you finally hit a point to where you could use more customers and not everything is a referral anymore and your business is growing, right? You know, you should just be reaching out to people intermittently because maybe they'll need your services in 3 months, or maybe they'll need them in 3 weeks. And so that's mostly what RevBoss does, is cold email marketing.
Okay.
We use LinkedIn as well, but we don't call. We just don't think that's nearly as effective as email. And some really big deals come out of outbound marketing. We had a customer last month, let's see, it's June. So yeah, last month closed a $2.7 million deal that came from a cold email, right?
Really?
It's their biggest deal yet. It was with Johnson & Johnson.
Wow.
So if you're just not doing those things, if you kind of ignore outbound, you can miss those really, really big opportunities that are out there that don't flash an RFP out into the world for agencies.
Okay, so we need to talk about this because as you know, I'm an inbound person. I feel very comfortable with inbound. I definitely know I'm not going out of my comfort zone. I just stick to inbound. But I always wanted to dabble a little bit in outbound and cold email. I have tried a bit of cold email marketing, but to the same extent as somebody said, I tried to run ads on Facebook for a month and it didn't work. And that's just the silliest thing to say. And I basically did the same thing, but with cold email. I found that the leads that were responding to me were just not as warm. I mean, yeah, they're cold. So what's the trick? How do you get big deals? I don't know where to start. Well, what's your process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. No, it's really like the first thing we do is try to figure out someone's ICP, and some SaaS companies that are funded, right, that we work with can tell us like that, right? And then some marketing agencies that are 10 people don't know that. And they say, well, it's everyone. And then we have to dig a little bit and we say, well, who's your 4 highest paying customers? Maybe we can find their sister companies and replicate them, right? We know those work and they've all been with you 2 years, right? And you're just making really good profit gravy off these. So let's find more of those clients. So it's really about figuring out who you're actually selling to and then playing a numbers game in that demographic, right? That's what outbound is. You're exactly right. These people aren't going to come to you begging to buy from you. So you have to have, I would say, the salespeople there, or the sales acumen yourself. If you're the president or CEO, you're kind of a CEO sales team to close those deals. But those deals sometimes happen where an inbound wouldn't. The way I describe inbound versus outbound is inbound is like the Luxor in Vegas, right? It's this big light that everybody can see from miles and miles away. And if you're interested in what's there, you might go there, right? Yeah. And outbound is more like a search team with flashlights. You can kind of see what's in front of you, but you're going out a certain direction to try to see what people are in that certain direction. So you have to play a volume game up front. It's a quantity game up front, and then a quality game as you go forward.
Okay, so at what point in the volume game, that's in all the emails that you're sending out, or just,
Sure.
Okay. And are they personalized?
They are personalized. So they are way better if they're personalized, right? Sometimes we find it depends on what the customer is actually selling, right? So, for instance, Texas businesses like to buy from Texas businesses, right? So if we have a customer who's in Texas, we might run a micro campaign of sorts, with Texas oriented messaging, right? If we're doing something for a client who sells internationally, right? We've got a whole bunch of different messages we need to try.
Yeah.
So it fundamentally comes down to, have we listened to enough customers talk yet?
Yeah.
So you basically, one of the things you can do in marketing that people don't realize is just steal your customer's language right out of their mouth, right? So if you are trying to take flying cat from 10 people to 50 people, right? And I hear you say that, I'll go, oh, maybe I'll send an email with the subject line, take your agency from 10 to 50 headcount.
Okay.
Right. And now I've got all the people open rate wise, who might be interested in that. I can narrow it down, right? And send to those people again. So fundamentally, you just want to be speaking the language of the people you're trying to convince. And if you can steal it straight from them, do that.
So how do you go about stealing the words straight from their mouths of people you've never spoken to?
You have to speak to them, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to talk to your customer and say, hey, do you have some recordings? Do you have some sales calls I can listen to?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll talk to folks, especially early SaaS companies who maybe haven't found product market fit yet, or marketing agencies who are still have like a CEO salesperson, and they don't know all the answers to these questions, and they don't have a lot of this stuff. So we have to dig in a little bit further. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to work with them yet, right? Sometimes they just don't know who they need to reach out to yet.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll give you an example real quick. I used to work at an ad agency in Lexington, Kentucky, and we did marketing for University of Kentucky's healthcare system, our entire healthcare system. And when we talked to the folks there, the big cheeses, we said, who are we marketing to? And they said, well, everybody gets healthcare. Everybody breaks their leg, right? So we're talking to everyone. Yeah. And that's not the case. That's never, ever the case. That's not a satisfactory answer if you're a marketer, right? Or even a salesperson. And so when we dug into like who actually makes medical decisions in a family, we figured out that it was a matriarchal situation, right? Mom makes decisions for the kids' dentist appointments, when they break their leg or their finger, which hospital they take them to. When dad has kidney stones, she decides where to take him. When dad's parents or her parents need to some care when they get elderly, she decides. So we figured out that mom makes 90% of the medical decisions across 3 generations. So that's who we're talking to. So you just have to dig in a little bit sometimes, and your customer cannot always tell you that, right? The further along they are, the more accurate they can tell you. But it's harder to work with companies when you don't have product market fit yet, and they know that.
Yeah. It's funny. I just, so I had last week, Diane Wiridu. She's a conversion copywriter. She was on the podcast, and she just shared something funny related to this, which was Neutrogena, I think, the skin brand. They put their messaging literally on the ad for people with skin.
Right. Who is that? Right. I'm pretty sure everyone knows carrying a bag of skin with them, right?
I just have to quote directly Diane, because it was just hilarious, the caption that she put, where it's like, the copywriter is like, okay, so who are you marketing to? Well, just people with skin, if I'm honest. She goes, okay, say no more. I have your tagline.
But even there, it's like people who care about their skin. That cuts that down by more than half, right?
Yeah.
So you got to figure out exactly who you're selling to. Sometimes you can't figure that out through the company themselves. And sometimes that means they're not ready for outbound, right? You've got enough business still trickling in off word of mouth. That's okay. But if you're really interested in going from 10 to 50 people, right, that might be the perfect time to introduce ourselves at RevBoss.
So you, as director of marketing, what kind of marketing do you do for RevBoss? Do you do
Chiefly so far, I've been at RevBoss 4 months now. Where we have been and where we are focusing our efforts are on educating our customers. If I'm being really frank with you, we turn people down pretty regularly. We've got enough people coming in. We don't need to be doing attention marketing right now, right? We've got all the customers we can handle. What we do see, and where I can be impactful for my CEO and for everyone in our company, is making sure when that customer comes to this first onboarding meeting, they know kind of what Outbound is. They know what to expect. They know that somebody's not going to call them in the first month, probably, because the first month is when we're doing our volume testing, right? We write these 4 different messages. We compare them against each other. We try to learn from it and, test open rates, and then go forward with things we're more confident in, right? And Outbound's different in that, like you said, people aren't coming to you clamoring to buy from you. So you might have to touch them 2, 3, hey, or 4 more times. And they go, okay, yeah, now this is a priority for me.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's one thing I would say RevBoss has a huge advantage with. I don't mean to keep plugging, but our copywriters are outstanding. Okay. I mean, really, really, really good. And so I would say they're just context masters. You know what I mean? We have a woman named Katie who is just great. She works with a lady named Alice who came to us from Adult Swim. She actually did Rick and Morty social before she worked at RevBoss. So we get really, really creative people in, and people who can really assess context.
That's awesome. So what channels are you guys on? Because I know you're really big about not spraying and praying, but being very intentional about the channels that you're on.
Yeah, I can tell you this, we're invested in 3, and for 3 different reasons. YouTube for discoverability and education, right? How to anything we want to answer with Outbound. A year from now, we want to, when you search Outbound on YouTube, that's where we want to be. Instagram for recruiting, because that's one of our big 2 endeavors at RevBoss right now. As we're growing so fast, we have to kind of perpetually hire. And we want people to be able to go to our Instagram to see what life is like, or what it would be like working at RevBoss. Okay. Right. So discoverability and how to education, YouTube, hiring on Instagram, and organic LinkedIn, right? Because that's really the only social channel where you can still get organic reach. Facebook is gone. Everybody knows that. And people are investing. It would have been great if you had invested 2 years ago in your LinkedIn hardcore, but you can still do it now and still get great results like you're getting, right? Release this little nugget of a video and pull them back to your site, or release this little nugget of a video and say oh, you can hear the rest of the conversation on our YouTube, right? And educate yourself. And that's what kind of creates those inbound opportunities like you're talking about.
I find that organic LinkedIn is just amazing. That's where I've built most of, actually, that's
where you and I met.
Yeah. I mean, I've built 90% of my company through organic LinkedIn, even though we are an SEO agency. But we haven't done SEO yet for so that's going to be the next step. And what about Outbound for your own agency or your own company?
That's a really good question. So I was put in charge of that last month, and I'm working with the way we're treating it is I'm literally a customer of my own company, right? I have my own account manager, I have copywriters, and I meet with them every couple of weeks or once a month, just like a client would. I would say the difference is I'm more involved in the writing of the emails process. But yeah, my CEO kind of entrusted that to me and said, look, you're going to build pipeline for us too, and we do the exact same type of outbound we do for our customers. We send some of the same, I don't want to say we have templatized, but we figured out some things that really work, right? In tech, for example. I'm not giving away like state secrets or anything here, but one of the best ways you can get someone's attention, an executive's attention, is have another executive mention them. Yeah. So we have like a email template where there's kind of, I don't want to call it like a fake forward, but there's already an email that's happened from the CEO to the sales director, and the sales director is reaching out to you, right? And we create inboxes on our clients' behalves. So it could be like the sales director of company X got an email from their CEO, and their CEO said, check out this company. And so you email them and you go, oh, look, below this, you can see where my CEO is asking about you guys, you know? So there's just things we know work, and we implement those for ourselves too. Okay,
wait, I'm not sure I totally understand. So you have a CEO of RevBoss, for example, or you
Yeah, my CEO, Eric, I could send an outbound cadence, right? Let's say to 1,000 people, in which the email is coming from, say, me, right? And I'll say, hey, I'm the director of marketing at RevBoss. My CEO mentioned you guys and said I should check you out. Is it cool if I talk to you and like ask you some questions about your agency? Oh. And all I'm trying to do is get my foot in the door. Yeah. And that back email showing that there's executive interest works.
Well, it works. What if you are the CEO?
Then
I just wanted to check you out.
Then absolutely do it firsthand. Yeah. And a lot of our customers who I mentioned are like early stage SaaS or small marketing companies, say under 20 people, do that exact thing. It is a CEO salesperson. That's totally fine. We can help those people too if they're at a point where they're ready to scale up, right? If they are sincere about wanting to have 50 headcount. In those cases, yeah, we would send as the CEO a lot of times and just say, hey, I'm wanting to ask somebody questions who's has 50 employees, right? And that's the conduit to the conversation. That's all you need. Outbound is about conversations. It's not about leads necessarily, right? We kind of trick ourselves, but if you conceive of life as a series of rooms and you're privy to certain rooms, and like some people get to walk into the Oval Office, some people get to be on a top floor of building on Madison Avenue, but it's no accident them getting there, right? So what RevBoss tries to do is get you into rooms you wouldn't have got into otherwise, right? Like this Johnson & Johnson deal I mentioned previously.
It sounds very tempting. You're selling it to me.
Okay, good. I'm not a salesperson. I'm just telling you, like, that's how outbound functions, right? Yeah. Inbound is a very different motion. It's a very different game. The returns take, I would say, quite a lot longer because you have to establish yourself. Outbound, you can kind of pique interest occasionally, right? Okay. When you're shining that light in the woods, occasionally like a deer looks up at you and you're just like, oh, we found what we were looking for, you know?
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking the contrary. I was thinking inbound, they already know who I am. They've already interacted with me for a while. I don't have to spend so much time selling myself. Where I thought for outbound, I do have to, like, I'm starting from scratch. There's no brand for them to have already been warmed up to, right?
Right. I would say you're correct in that for the sales cycle itself, you probably will have to sell 9 out of 10 times an outbound lead harder than an inbound lead, right? But to establish inbound that gets you 10 leads.
Yeah, that takes longer.
Takes a lot longer than to turn on outbound and not necessarily spray and pray, but like pick a direction, fire a shotgun that direction and see if you hear something scream, right?
Yeah.
Like you can do that faster. Do what?
I said it's a violent analogy, but I see where you're going.
Yeah, sorry, I did the deer hunter thing and I couldn't get away from it. Sorry, I'll get out of it.
It's all good. So you're really into content though. You've always been a content kind of guy, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. I worked at ad agencies before I switched to SaaS about 5 years ago. And I was a copywriter. I mean, that's what my degrees are in and stuff is creative writing. And so I would say that how that's helped me now that I'm a director of marketing and I'm all over all aspects of marketing is just assess context, right? Of the situation. Yeah, there are some low hanging fruit. Should I do that, or should I invest 3 months into building this thing that I know will, I'm better served building now than in 2 years,
Yeah.
right? You have to make those calls. And the biggest thing for me now that I'm in this position is picking 3 or 4 things I'm going to do, like the big rocks. Have you seen the Stephen Covey video where he like has the little bitty rocks and the big rocks he puts into the bucket? If you put all the little rocks in first, you can't cram the big rocks in. But if you put the big rocks in first, then the little stuff fits around it. That's exactly what we're trying to do at RevBoss. And like the way I try to concentrate my efforts. If you spread yourself too thin, just like the social channels, if you think you need to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all, you don't. I can promise you, right? Unless you're, I don't know, a publicly traded company, but I'm not talking to them right now, you and I. We're talking to like our peers, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, concentrate on 3 or 4 things and don't half-ass a dozen things. That's what I'm learning more and more as I get more senior in my marketing career.
Whole ass is better.
Right. Whole ass 3 things. Don't half-ass a dozen things. Yeah. That's how I wrote it to you in the email, right?
Yeah. It's like
Yes.
whole asses, they're great. They're great. I agree with all of that. I've been going hard on one channel, and it provides a lot of fruit. And I think that it's hard to say at what point, because I think that you can go whole ass, let's say, on a channel, and then at some point you're able to try something else and move on. What or not move on, but start testing other areas to see maybe what bites. How often do you try to dabble with other things, or do you just try to stay focused on the 3 channels areas?
I'm going to make, I've kind of placed all the bets I have with all the money I have, if that makes sense. Metaphorically, already at RevBoss, I don't think I'll be trying brand new things until I do the things I said I was going to do for a year, right? And that's the weird thing about marketing. Everybody like wants to pivot, but it's like, this hasn't had time to work yet.
Yeah.
Right. And you know that with this very podcast, right? It's like, I'm sure more people message you about trying to get on it now than they did when you're on episode 3, right?
Oh, yeah.
To the point where it's almost solicitous, right? But each of those people works at a company and knows your company. They know your name. And not all of them are decision makers, but some of them are, and some of them will become, right? So if you had decided to dabble in something else, then you might have started half-assing this when you shouldn't have. So yeah, but you were asking me, sorry, you were asking me about copy. Did you have another question there? Or like writing?
I was just interested in your background in content and actually how that plays into Outbound and how important copy is.
It's probably the most critical thing, like behind getting the ICP right. You need to know who you're talking to and like how they receive messages. You know this from being in the position you've been in for the last year. Executives write emails with like doctors write prescriptions. They're not paying attention almost. They're just trying to communicate the thing fast. And they don't use the word I a lot. They'll say, let's do this. We'll be here. Bye. Right. So you need to be really, really good with your messaging and your copy, depending on your audience, right? You can be more curt with executives and more straightforward. Maybe you need to be a little creative to get like an experiential agency's attention, right? Why do they care about like cold email?
Yeah.
So just think about the person who's on the receiving end of that. And that's where you need really talented people in copy. I would say that's the point of failure for most people who try to do outbound themselves, right? They'll say, we've tried it a year, but they've tried 2 messages across a year that weren't good, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have anybody to objectively say, you know, I'm not sure the people you're trying to reach speak this way. Or I don't know that they even care about getting a $30 gift card, right? Executives don't care about a $30 gift card, but a director might, you know? So think about who you're aiming at.
Yeah.
And tailor the message to that person.
I have to say, I get a lot of cold emails, a lot more in the last 4 years.
Sure.
And a lot of the copy is just, I read them sometimes, you know, it's not like I always delete them. Sometimes I open them and I read them. And I'm thinking, do you actually care if I respond to this email?
Yeah. It's
Do you want me to-
pitiful sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, does this work? How
Yeah.
many?
I'm literally writing a blog today, this morning, about like 7 email openers that are stronger than I hope this finds you well. Right. It's just, it's embarrassing sometimes. We default to business language, but
Yeah.
I would never get on this podcast with you and say like, oh, are you well?
I hope I found
Like,
you well today.
yeah, I hope I found you well. Are you well in Spain? Is all well? Greetings from Tennessee. Like nobody would ever do that.
No.
It's super weird. So a lot of times colloquialism and email like sets it apart, right? You know, an email that's come from one of your colleagues because the subject line is like, hey, look at it.
Yeah.
Or it's like versus all these other ones that are like 50% off socks at Old Navy. You got like 4 of those, and you got one that's like lol, right? And you know, like that's from one of your friends. And so if you'll interrupt that kind of you'll take your business jacket off and like sit down like you would be approaching someone. Like you don't have to say, hey, this is Adam with RevBoss, right? What's the conduit to get you into the room?
Yeah.
And that's all you're trying to accomplish. Literally all you're trying to accomplish. You're not trying to sell in that first email. You might let them know what you do in passing, right?
So what's the next step in these kind of emails? It's to just have them reply, or what do you ask them to do?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want them to eventually know what you do, but your first hump is getting their attention, right? Like just apply it to a regular conversation. If you and I were in the same room right now, and I was thirsty, I couldn't go, hey, get me some tea. You'd go, Jesus, like, okay, right? I might go, hey, Mava, do you have any tea here? Right? And you'd be like, sure, do you want some? Like, make it casual. What we do in marketing too often is like we ask people to marry us, like when we see them in the street, right? You like walk up to someone and be like, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's like, that's creepy even.
Yeah.
It makes me not want to do business with you. But if you walk up and just go, I actually have those shoes, that same pair of shoes in men's. Isn't that weird? Right? It's like, did you buy a ladies big size? Or then you started this weird conversation and they're interested in even talking to you because you're suddenly a 3-dimensional person. And they're like, so what do you do? Right? All you're trying to do is get a conduit to let them know eventually what you do. But starting with that is the example I use is always like asking someone to marry you who you haven't met.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've tried some different formulations of cold emails, and when I was still finding my niche, now we have clients from all different kinds of SaaS, but we've chosen a specific vertical, vacation rental technology, which is very niche, niche. It's a small world. And I realized all the cold emails that I sent, which was, I'm an agency, we help companies like yours, whatever, it's completely generic, never got responses. But when I started name dropping, I've helped companies like X and Y, which are the competitors of these people or people that they want to be like, suddenly those all get responses.
Right. Well, I mean, all of a sudden you're playing in their industry. Like that's their sandbox.
Yeah.
It's like when you use jargon of a certain industry, you're writing to people in the medical industry or the vacation industry, like use a little term that they know, but other people don't know, all of a sudden they're like, oh, this person's in the in group.
Yeah, they know.
Right?
They know. Well, I feel like I have a lot more to learn from you about Outbound. And then maybe we'll talk after this call one day about working with RevBoss when we have the capacity. Because
that sounds good. Other
yeah.
agencies like yourself can check us out at revboss.com or on LinkedIn.
This is Buddy the Flying Cat coming into the podcast episode.
What's up, Buddy? My dog's outside right now. Maybe I'll introduce him another time.
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. This has been a great chat, Adam. Where's the best place for somebody to connect with you if they want to learn more?
LinkedIn, definitely, right? I'm active there. I check it as much as I do my text messages, if I'm being honest. So I think my LinkedIn's /N/Adam C. Lambert.
All
but
right.
you can find me. I'm friends with Miss Cifuentes, so find me that way.
Great.
Check out Flying Cat and RevBoss.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Adam. This has been really fun.
Yeah, it's great to meet you and Buddy.
Yeah, same. And whoever was listening or watching this episode, please give it a like, share it with somebody that you think might find it interesting, and subscribe to the channel or to the podcast. And thank you so much for listening and for being here with us today.